Hello, podcast listeners. This is your host with the most. Get your D20s together and listen up. I've got a new Dungeons & Dragons campaign, and Tucker's going to help me make my character. Sit back, relax, and be jealous of this D&D episode of JJ Meets World. And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. J.J. Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. J.J. has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called J.J. Meets World.
Tucker, I was put on a blood pressure medication by my doctor, and he said, you might have a little bit of like restlessness, like a little bit of like inability to sleep. And I thought, well, you know, my superpower is being able to fall asleep in 5 seconds anywhere. And I feel like I found my kryptonite. 3 days in a row, I have been up until gall darn 3 a.m. on like school nights.
What's going on with you?
I don't know. And then I had, so to kind of catch everyone up right now, I had a really long weekend. On Friday night, Fargo North High had an improv show, so I was with my improv kiddos. Saturday, I had a little bit of time in the morning that was free, but then I got in a car and I drove to the University of Minnesota campus in Minneapolis, and I accepted a ton of awards for KFGO from the Midwest Broadcast Journalism Association, which is 6 states of all market sizes and colleges that are included with it. So honored, including a piece that my partner Amy Eiler and I did, which was a ketchup taste test, or is it catsup, where we tasted Heinz, Hunt's, and a generic brand ketchup. And I mean, listen, I was able to identify all of them just by sight. And I think you probably could too, Tucker.
I don't believe so. I think ketchup, I don't think I would. I think I would struggle with ketchup.
Oh, trust me, dude. I'm telling you right now, even if you don't think, if you saw these 3 things in 3 different ramekins, you'd be like, well, this is clearly the victor. Heinz is the king of ketchup. So we went there, accepted the award, and then drove back immediately. So I spent 12 hours just pretty much driving to the Twin Cities, going to a banquet, and driving home. And then I had to get up today, and that brings me to where we're at right now, which is I am starting a new Dungeons & Dragons campaign with my old crew, and I'm very excited about it. Very excited.
Nice.
Yeah, so I want to bring the JJ Meets World listeners into the character creation and let them have a little bit of say in what's going to take place. So
you're all starting brand new characters, like clean slate,
rolling them from the ground up. The only thing that we're going to do is we're going to start at level 3 and not at level 1, so that we can get into some more like, you know, some more advanced gameplay other than like, all right, you're taking on one bad guy. So
right.
I was watching Land of the Lost the other day, and the old one, the Sid and Marty Krofft one. And I was like, you know what? I should have a character that is actually from this world, like our world, and I get transported into the fantasy world. And so what I've opted to do is it's 1885, Deadwood, South Dakota. My character is a gunslinger who has decided that he doesn't want to be a gun for hire anymore. And so he wants to live a quieter life. So I am panning for gold in the South Dakota territory. And I just kind of want to be left alone. I'm not isolated, but if I come into town and the church is having a potluck, I'll throw a couple coins in and I'll chat with people. Every now and then someone comes to town who knows me from my gunslinging days. It's kind of a Wild Bill Hickok kind of story, but I'm a younger man.
Right.
So this is where, Tucker, you get to make the first decision. I'm going to give you 6 different names.
Ooh, okay.
And you need to decide, which cowboy name I'm going to go by, okay?
Okay.
Iron Belly Norton. Senator Cletus Scoffpossum. Floyd Dangle. Shotgun Jonesy. Jebediah Dry as Dust. Or King Cotton.
Oh, what was the second one?
Senator Cletus Scoffpossum.
Option number 2.
Okay. Now, I'm not actually a senator, but people just call me Senator.
Yeah, it's almost like your hobo name.
Right. Bingo. It's people are really hoping, like at one time there was a joke that I should run for Congress because I could clean them up the way I clean up the towns of the Old West.
Yeah, that would probably be where you got it. Would be just a nickname, is that it's a reference to how well you sling gun.
Right. Now, the only thing is I don't like being called Cletus. It was my dad's name, and Dad was none too kind to me. So if someone comes in and they're like, well, if it isn't Cletus Scoffpossum, I'm going to be an ornery cuss, to say the least. Okay, so Senator Cletus Scoffpossum, I am panning for gold. And my britches are drenched from the crick, and I'm working on a song that I've written called Whiskey Swamp. And Whiskey Swamp is a place where you go to forget about your woes, but not about your favorite hoes.
So he's aware of how to use the word hoe like that?
No, he's the first person to do it. This will be the first
he invents it. Wow.
Of the word hoe.
Okay. And it gets recorded in some way that knowledge gets passed on.
Well, yeah, because he's writing it down. He's putting his chicken scratch on an old piece of paper that he's got. In fact, it's an old wanted poster that it was like a bounty he was going after. And so every time a good lyric comes to his mind, something about like how a swamp is like your memories, he stops panning and he wades over and he'll make his mark on the page so that he can remember. He thinks that he could write a whole bunch of songs about different bodies of water that are also whiskeys, like Whiskey Inlet, Whiskey River, Whiskey Bay, Whiskey Gulf, Whiskey Aqueduct.
Yeah, and the album cover would be, running rapids crashing against the shore, and it would just say Scotch on the Rocks.
Yeah, what's an album is what he'd ask. I don't think they had records at that point. Maybe an Edison tube.
I think I'm fuzzy as to where in American history Senator whatever his name is,
Senator Cletus Scoffpossum.
Scoffpossum. The senator. I'll just call him Senator. What era specifically he's from? But if he's spitting rhymes, then it would go in the lyric book, I guess, that would get sent out to school children.
Right, yeah. But like his dream is to put together some kind of bound tome, like a hymn book that you'd find in a church, but full of his more modern songs of the day.
So in his time, there's no Victrola, you're saying? There's no...
I don't believe so. I believe that is much later.
Okay.
There's not even like like he's writing these things because he's got.
What about railroads? Does he know about railroads? I would assume.
Oh yeah, the railroad exists, and it's not everywhere. The tracks haven't come nearby enough yet to where he's set up camp. It's still about 20 miles, 25 miles from where he's camping. But yeah, in fact, they're talking about putting up a telegraph wire. And that is witchcraft to him. Cletus is out there, but he doesn't want to be called Cletus. It was his pappy's name. And while he's out panning for gold, he hears a strange noise, almost like like a hello and a goodbye at the same time. And he notices off in the woods that there is sort of like a glowing light. And being that he's not a man who knows much fear, he decides he's going to go check it out. And so the senator walks over and he sees this sort of it's like a lake that's floating, and it's huge, and it goes up beyond as high as you can see in the horizon. But it's not wide. It's very tall, but it's not wide. It's probably about 40 feet wide total. And it looks like there's water floating in the air. It's got that look of sort of like waves. And so he goes over, he gets closer, and it's a reflection of what he sees. So he sees himself in this reflection and the world behind him, but not knowing what's on the other side, when all of a sudden, out of nowhere, his trusty dog, who we also need to name. And so would you like to name the dog now or continue with the story?
Now.
Okay. The dog's name is either going to be Dog, Rex, or Whiffle. Whiffle. So his dog Whiffle, which is named after his mom, who was Clara Whiffle, by her maiden name. She and his pa never got hitched. So Whiffle runs through this barrier and disappears. And he can't understand it. He can't see it. He can't hear anymore. And so he himself steps through, and it's like stepping through a doorway. He doesn't feel different. He's not covered in any kind of like moisture or wet substance. And he is in an area that is more like the American Southwest, a place that he's been before, where it's very dry, sparse trees. It's good cattle land because it's so flat. But he realizes he's not in the same place anymore, but he can't understand why. And he immediately turns around and there's nothing there anymore. It is just horizon facing back at him.
Wow. He's in the Spider-Verse now.
Right, exactly. The one good sign is he can see Whiffle in the distance digging into the ground.
And this isn't like a quantum leap, right? Like this is merely just a time. It's not like a different alternate reality.
Well, we don't know that yet.
Oh, okay.
We don't know. It certainly isn't the same place anymore. Like he doesn't, it's not like the topography matches, there's no creek,
right.
In the distance, like nothing matches as far as like his location. But there's no signs of like being a time leap. There's no signs of anything. I mean, it's jarring enough to be in a completely different place. So he goes over to where Whiffle is digging, and Whiffle is digging up some kind of like bone. And he's still trying to understand what's going on, and he's not really minding Whiffle that much. He's not telling Whiffle to stop. When Whiffle finally unearths this bone from the dry, dusty ground, it is something he has never seen before. It's the jawbone of the Dragonborn race, which is a half human, half dragon creature that can speak common tongue, but has the facial features of a dragon. So imagine how that jawbone would look. And he instantly goes, I'm not in South Dakota anymore, which later would be how the we're not in Kansas anymore line ends up.
So there was already a South Dakota at this point.
It was just about to become a in fact, I think that was the year it became a state, 1885.
So he wasn't like, we're not in Dakota territory anymore.
Bingo,
he was specifically saying South. He was saying specifically South Dakota.
Correct. Dakota. And you're right. You're getting it. You are 100% in the mind of the senator right now. So this is what we have to figure out. So as I get to go on my adventuring with the rest of my party, I need to figure out what he's got on him. Okay. And this is where I need more help, Tucker.
Okay.
The senator is out mining for gold, not thinking about much else. What do you think that he has on his person at this time?
Okay, he's out there looking for gold, And he's been out there for a while now.
Yeah, he's probably been out for a week. He's been out like camping near his claim for a week. So it's been a while since he's been back to town.
He's going to have some kind of like a small knife.
I like that small knife.
Right, that he's going to be using, to maybe carve up food, or he might have a fishing pole actually, because
do you think he was carrying it at the time?
I think it's with him, because that might just be like, hey, I have to always have this with me in case I get stuck out here or something. Right?
So do you think it's a collapsible like 3/3 pole, like that you'd kind of pop together?
Most fishing poles do come apart. And so if he has to travel, then I'm sure he's probably traveling with it in pieces in some way. Yeah, that makes sense.
So probably like maybe he's wearing some kind of like not a bandolier, but something where he could have it just on his back at any time.
Yeah, and he's probably carrying some flint so that he can start a fire.
Okay,
as needed.
What do you think he's got on him for rations? Do you think he's got some dry salted beef? Or do you think like maybe he, I
think he's a vegetarian.
Oh my. Okay, so maybe he's got an apple in his back pocket.
Yeah, I think he's basically foraging.
Ooh, I like that. He's a forager.
But so he would eat. Maybe he would eat fish, though, right? So he's like
he's a one of those then.
Yeah, he's one of those vegetarians where he's like, I just don't eat, meat, but fish is not meat. Fish is vegetable.
He's got to get a little protein. So he actually probably has some stuff in his back pocket, maybe like a mushroom, some ramps.
Yep. He probably, he knows where to look for the right kinds of berries, and the mushrooms that are edible. He probably knows how to like find like tuber roots in the ground. He probably even knows all sorts of things about what tree bark you can peel off of and chew on as like an aspirin or something, right?
Yeah, he is a man to
a flask.
Oh, I like that.
He would have a flask.
So, what do you think is in that flask?
Well, didn't he write all these things about whiskey swamps and stuff?
Yeah, he does. He's written a lot of songs about whiskey. Do you think it's whiskey that's in there, or do you think it's something else?
I think it's whiskey that's in there because whiskey is his friend, and that's why he's He's writing songs about it.
Okay. He's got a flask with whiskey. What do you think he's wearing? I said he's got some, he's got some breeches on, so he's got some sort of pant. I can't imagine he's wearing a full duster while he's, in a creek panning for gold.
No, I mean he's probably wearing waders of some kind. So it's probably something that would be like a boot, pant, like unified object.
Okay.
That's then up on him, but is obviously not made of rubber, right? So it'd be probably just more of like a leather or something. Wouldn't be as watertight, but then he could easily just run in and out of creeks or cricks.
Okay. Headwear, what do you think? Do you think he's got just a standard cowboy hat on?
I would assume. Well, yeah. I mean, he's probably at minimum he's got that.
I was thinking, like, what do you think about a bowler hat on our guy? How they wear that's very city bowler.
That's very city or bartendery.
So here's the thing. I beg to disagree, because I think that there were plenty of people who wore that as like they're just like going around type hat, because I think I think that has a very European like feel to it. Like it's a very immigrant kind of feel to it.
Yeah, but he also the only big difference is that there's functionality that's lost there. And if he was the rootinest, tootinest gunslinger for a period of time, he was going to have something that kept the sun out of his eyes, and a bowler's not going to do that.
Okay. So he's got a standard.
But I think there are a couple other things that maybe he would try. Like maybe he would try like a hat that he made in the forest.
So
right.
I think
like
that there's a chance that he's used large like pine balms to create what is the first bucket cap.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, he might just be creating. I think he's someone who can, if need be, just completely subsist off the forest.
Okay, I like that.
He's almost a ranger, but with
Now,
guns.
One thing that I have to insist on is that his right arm is much more muscular than his left arm.
Okay, why is that?
Because he always thought it would be impressive to his enemies to do one-arm push-ups. So he spent a lot of time working on his right arm. And that's also the arm that he uses to pull his gun, because he's known for having a very, very heavy gun, but being able to use it as if it's light. It's a very light piece of weaponry.
Is this just supposed to be a nod to Lady in the Water?
I mean, a little bit. Why not, right?
I like the idea that before he duels someone, he does some one-handed push-ups first.
Yeah, he shows them.
So that they see it.
I mean, in a way, it's his intimidation, right? It's his technique that he uses to get people to be unnerved when they're in front of him. And while he's been panning for gold, he has been trying to build up the strength in his left hand, but it's just so much easier to do everything with his right hand because his right hand's built like a birch tree trunk.
Mm-hmm.
And
he's got to be careful that his fingers don't get so thick that they have trouble getting in and around the trigger.
Well, that's the thing. He's got a modified gun.
Yeah.
That's part, like, instead of having like a single like 6-shooter what do they call that? Like the area where the trigger is?
A pistol?
It's as big as like a shotgun.
But there is also a downside to that. Keep this in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Is, let's say he's out in the field and he's firing his guns, and then something happens and those guns malfunction, or they're shot themselves. They don't function anymore. So he needs to just grab anything he can. And so, but now his fingers are too big because he needs a modified gun. So any other gun he picks up, he can't put his finger in the trigger now. So he's like, no, I need specifically these guns and no other ones.
Okay, so I hate to poke holes in your scenario, but he's in the middle of the forest having some kind of gunfight with something. Maybe a man, maybe
like
an animal. Okay,
like a bear that's got a gun. Like, but let's say a bear has a gun.
So his gun clogs, but luckily there's a whole bunch of just other guns there.
Well, more likely, if there are other guns around, they're not going to be modified. They're going to be standard issue.
Okay. So on the off chance that he gets into a gun battle and his custom-made guns do not function, he is lucky enough to be surrounded by regular, normal people guns in the forest.
Yeah, because here's what happens. Because Senator's walking along, and he's just kind of going downstream, and he's just like, yeah, I got to keep going down this way, and isn't really watching for the fact that he's just sort of stumbled into a territory of moonshiners. So basically what happens is he's like getting shot at from like all sides. So he's like taking cover, and he's finding their different gun stashes that they have like around the encampment. And so that's why he's finding all of these guns all of a sudden.
I get it. Okay. That makes way more sense to me.
Mm-hmm. What was the question again?
No, I was just insisting that he's got, I was going to say, so he constantly is ripping the sleeves off of his, off of the right side of his jackets and his shirts, so that he can constantly show off.
Which is something that a normal person shouldn't do. But in the case of this character, I think it makes sense.
He's constantly getting sunburns and like the bug bites. And so, but he really does believe in the full intimidation factor of this right arm. Okay. And so we find Senator Cletus Scoffpossum in an unknown world with only his dog Whiffle and a sense of adventure. Thus begins my upcoming D&D campaign, which I guess, according to our dungeon master, will be set in in like an old west world, but in a fantasy realm.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it.
And so is this gonna be your regular Sunday night thing?
Here's the thing. It gets harder to schedule something every single week as you get older and older and older.
Right.
So I think what we're going to do is we're going to aim to do every other Sunday.
Okay.
And we'll do 2 or 3 hours and then call it quits. Maybe if there's maybe like on Memorial Day weekend, we'll get together on Sunday night of Memorial Day weekend. We'll have like a rager and go until midnight or something like that.
Sure.
So, but yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it, but I am so tired. I gotta go take a nap.
Take a nap, buddy.
Okay. Hey, have a really super week. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com, where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information. He is also a skilled lover.